Welcome to the drafting room, everyone. Today's explainer has a massive, highly structural project sitting right in front of us. We're rolling up our sleeves and diving straight into a foundational challenge. Look, today we are exploring exactly how to engineer answers that secure an unshakable A-star in your Cambridge Accounting 9706 exams. And let me be clear right out of the gate. We aren't just going to sit here and memorize formulas. Anybody can do that. The difference between a collapsing B grade and a towering, flawless A-star often comes down to one absolutely critical area. It's all about how well we construct our arguments around efficiency ratios. Specifically, we're talking about trade receivables, trade payables, and inventory turnover. I want you to think of this session as a high-rise exam construction blueprint workshop. We're going to look closely at how to lay down an unshakable thesis foundation. We're going to erect load-bearing analytical arguments, and we're going to construct structural sentence connections that are guaranteed to survive the most rigorous examiner stress testing. If your current answers feel a bit wobbly, you're in the right place. Let's get to work.
Okay, here is the exact sitemap we'll be using to erect those analytical arguments today. We'll start in the blueprint room, then move on to reading the system blueprint. After that, we've got the ironwork peer debate, a quick mid-build inspection, and we'll finish up with the rebar stress test. Let's get our hard hats on.
Phase 1 of our project, the blueprint room. It is time to secure the foundation.
Right, securing the foundation of any accounting argument requires the correct materials. In our case, those materials are trade receivables, trade payables, and inventory turnover. You literally cannot build a solid analytical skyscraper if you do not intimately understand how these three materials interact with one another. Think about it. If your inventory sits in a warehouse too long, your cash is trapped. If your receivables take too long to collect from your customers, while you can't pay your payables. It's a deeply interconnected physical structure. To really understand this, let's look at two common ways candidates completely fail on the exam site. Let's introduce Builder Alex and Builder Sam. Both of their approaches instantly collapse under examiner stress testing. Take a look at Alex's approach on the left. Alex loves heavy bricks. Alex approaches an exam question by just stacking raw facts, writing out endless textbook definitions, and calculating ratios down to the fifth decimal point without ever stopping to check if the steel frame can actually support that weight. Alex will calculate the trade receivables ratio perfectly, but won't write a single word explaining what it actually means for the business's day-to-day liquidity. It's just a giant pile of heavy bricks with absolutely no mortar to hold it together. The examiner looks at it and says, "So what?" Then, on the right, we have Builder Sam. Sam loves shiny glass. Sam wants the building to look beautiful and professional instantly, so Sam hangs fancy, evaluative buzzwords everywhere. Furthermore, therefore, in conclusion, liquidity is incredibly poor, before ever cementing the foundational columns or addressing the actual command words in the prompt. Sam makes these massive, sweeping judgments without anchoring them to the actual calculated ratios. Putting shiny glass on a non-existent foundation means it's just going to shatter the second the wind blows.
So, what's the takeaway here? The absolutely crucial point is that we must merge the calculation with the evaluation. Transforming a fragile, wobbly B grade into an unshakable A-star evaluation requires a conceptual framework, a framework built on systematic analysis and evidence-based reasoning. You cannot just be Alex laying bricks blindly, and you cannot just be Sam hanging glass in midair. You need Alex's heavy bricks, that is the hard data, the correct calculations, but you need them securely locked into Sam's shiny glass, the evaluative insights. And how do you lock them together? Using the high-grade steel of systematic analysis. Let me put that into perspective. When you calculate that inventory turnover has slowed down from 12 times a year to 8 times a year, you cannot just state that fact and move on. You must systematically reason out why that matters. Why did it drop? Is the stock becoming obsolete? Are our warehouse storage costs rising because things are sitting around? Are we tying up capital that we desperately need to pay our suppliers? That deep logical connection, that is how you pour a foundation that examiners simply cannot crack.
Moving on to Phase 2, reading the system blueprint. We need to intimately understand the Cambridge regulations.
You need to treat every single mark scheme like a strict building code. If your paragraph violates the code, the examiner demolishes it. 0 marks. We need to look closely at what I call command stress points. These are words in the prompt like analyze, evaluate, and advise. Here is the ultimate building code, pulled directly from the Cambridge architectural syllabus itself. Quote, "Top-performing students exhibit connected, conceptual understanding transferable to unfamiliar contexts." So, what does that actually mean for us on the job site? First off, it means a purely descriptive building will collapse. If you just describe what a ratio is, you earn minimal, low-level marks. Connected understanding means you actively show the examiner the chain reaction. You show them how a delay in trade receivables directly causes a strain on trade payables, which then forces the business to go to the bank and rely on a really expensive overdraft. And what about transferable to unfamiliar contexts? That means whether the exam hands you a blueprint for a massive manufacturing business, a local retail store, or a niche service provider, you know exactly how to adapt and apply these efficiency ratios to their specific situation.
Okay, let's dive into the most dangerous hazards you'll face on the site. We've combed through the principal examiner reports to reveal the top 3 structural mistakes, the top 3 site safety violations that cause students to just absolutely hemorrhage marks. Violation number 1, using the wrong approach for the wrong context. This happens when a student panics and uses a profitability framework to answer a working capital question. Look, if the examiner asks you to evaluate efficiency, please don't start talking to me about net profit margins. It's the wrong material for the job. Violation number 2, forgetting to check format and presentation. I know it sounds incredibly basic, but you wouldn't believe how often this happens. Failing to write days after a receivables calculation or times after an inventory turnover calculation is literally like forgetting the bolts in your steel beams. The structure wobbles, the examiner loses faith in your accuracy, and you lose easy marks. And violation number 3, providing generic answers not specific to the given context. This is, without a doubt, the deadliest violation of all. Let's say the prompt is about a company that sells perishable fruit. If you write your evaluation and say, well, they should just hold more inventory to ensure they always meet customer demand, your building just collapsed. Think about it. Perishable inventory rots. Holding more of it is a terrible idea for that specific business. You must use the context provided.
To avoid those terrible violations, we have to enforce a rule of analytical depth. This is the assessment framework's strict requirement, prioritizing deeply logical, structured reasoning over superficial breadth. You cannot just lay a really wide, shallow foundation. You have to dig deep into the ground to support the high tariff marks. Instead of giving the examiner a list of 6 shallow, completely disconnected points about why efficiency is generally a good thing, it is so much stronger to give them just 2 or 3 deeply excavated points. Show the chain of events. Show the primary effect. Receivables days have increased. Then show the secondary effect. Because they increased, this creates an immediate cash deficit. Then show the tertiary effect. Because of that cash deficit, the business must now delay its payable days, which risks losing valuable early payment discounts and seriously straining long-term supplier relations. Do you see the difference? That is analytical depth. That is how you build a skyscraper.
So naturally, you might be wondering, how do we systematically dig that deep under exam pressure? Here is the exact procedural framework sequence laid out for you to process your structural math. Step 1. Deconstruct the question. Circle the command word. Are you analyzing or are you evaluating? Step 2. Extract relevant data. Pull the specific numbers from the stimulus materials. Step 3. Select the analytical framework. In today's case, that's our efficiency ratios. Step 4. Execute the calculation with clear notation. Show every single step of your working. Step 5. Verify the results. Do a quick sanity check. Does taking 150 days to collect receivables make any logical sense for this type of business? If not, you might want to recount your bricks. Step 6. Present your findings with correct terminology. By strictly following these 6 steps, your numerical data will be perfectly prepped and cured to bear the heavy weight of your written evaluation.
All right, let's step into Phase 3, the ironwork peer debate, where we focus on framing the argument.
Our 2 friends, Builder Alex and Builder Sam, are back at the drafting board. They're attempting to construct a model response block. They've done all their calculations, but now comes the hard part. They have to write the actual evaluative paragraph. Let's watch them clash over this. Alex steps up first and pours what I call the terminology cement block. Alex's paragraph literally just says, trade receivables are the people who owe the business money. The formula is trade receivables over credit sales multiplied by 365. It shows liquidity. Alex steps back, proud, thinking this is a strong, impenetrable wall. It's absolutely not. Alex is just filling the paragraph with massive, rigid definitions that lack any evaluative flexibility. There is zero context regarding the actual business in the prompt. Then Sam steps up and builds the hollow evaluative frame. Sam's paragraph reads, however, the business might face severe liquidity issues and could go bankrupt if they don't manage their cash better. Therefore, they should really evaluate their inventory. Sam leaves these huge empty spaces with dynamic-sounding counterarguments, severe liquidity issues, go bankrupt, but uses absolutely zero concrete data from the case study to anchor them. The core problem with Alex's approach is that the cement is way too dense. It's factual, sure, but it doesn't actually answer the specific evaluative prompt. And the problem with Sam's frame is that it's completely hollow. Not a single calculated ratio was quoted to prove why this specific business might go bankrupt.
To fix their framing, Sam and Alex must learn to apply critical analysis. In our line of work, this means identifying limitations, the assumptions being made, alternative interpretations, and their ultimate effect on the conclusions. Top-scoring A-star evaluative thinking requires you to actively question assumptions and leave room to justify your decisions with actual, hard evidence. Let's look at an example. Let's say trade receivables days have improved dramatically, dropping from 60 days down to 30 days. Alex will just write, liquidity improved, and call it a day. But applying real critical analysis means questioning that assumption. Is it actually purely a good thing? A master architect will write something like this. While the reduction in receivable days from 60 to 30 clearly suggests improved short-term cash flow, we must consider the alternative interpretation. Did the business achieve this by implementing overly aggressive credit control policies? If so, this harsh approach might alienate loyal long-term customers, driving them to competitors and ultimately reducing future sales volume. Boom! Now that is an A-star structural beam. It shows you see the whole picture.
Which brings me to a massive examiner alert. I'm slamming down a core warning right here. Always link every single point you make to the given scenario context. I can't emphasize this enough. Generic answers are weak cement. They will completely fail the system blueprint. If the exam prompt explicitly states that the business is a technology company selling fast depreciating laptops, your inventory turnover analysis must mention the risk of technological obsolescence. If you just write a generic sentence like, holding too much inventory is bad because of warehouse storage costs, you are getting 0 contextual marks. You have to use the exact building materials the examiner provided on the site. Talk about the laptops becoming outdated.
Phase 4 already. Let's do a mid-build inspection and upgrade our cement.
All right, tools down for a second. Site inspection. Before we pour the final layer of Tex concrete on our explainer today, we are running a mandatory site safety audit. Make sure your construction line is reinforced. Subscribe to Ace the Exams right now and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our weekly structural grade upgrades. Whether you are laying down an IGCE foundation or setting up an A-level skyscraper, this channel is your primary grid. Okay, inspection over, let's get back to the build.
I want to introduce you to a massive structural safety net that you absolutely must utilize, the method mark strategy. This is essentially the scaffolding where examiners award you structural marks for using the correct processes, even if your final mathematical calculation slips up. Let's be real, the exam room is a high-pressure environment. Your hands are sweating, the clock is ticking, and it is incredibly easy to miskey a single number on your calculator. If you just write down the final wrong answer on the paper, the examiner sees a broken, unusable beam and gives you 0 marks. But if you write down the formula first, clearly input the numbers from the text, and show your step-by-step logic, the examiner can see your scaffolding. Even if the final number is wrong because of a calculator typo, you will still get marks for the method. You essentially rescue a failing evidence beam by relying on correct, documented procedural processes. The golden rule of exam construction: never, ever build without your scaffolding. Show your work.
To ensure that your scaffolding is perfectly engineered every single time, we use a deconstruct, solve, evaluate methodology. Here is exactly how you engineer a load-bearing response block, step by step. 1. Identify give information. Literally take your highlighter and highlight the key financial data in the text. 2. Break it into logical steps. Decide right then and there which specific efficiency ratios are needed to answer the prompt. 3. Solve systematically. Write out the formula. Insert your highlighted data and calculate. 4. Check for reasonableness. Step back and look at your number. Does 500 days for inventory turnover make any logical sense for a local grocery store? Absolutely not. You probably made a calculation error, so fix it now before you build on it. 5. Make justified recommendations. This is where you use the PL structure. Make your point, back it up with evidence from the ratios you just calculated, explain the direct impact on the business, and link it back to the specific context of the question. This 5-step process ensures your cement cures perfectly every single time you sit down to write.
And now, we reach Phase 5, the rebar stress test. It's time for a live safety audit.
I am turning the drafting screen over to you. Let's look carefully at this complex data matrix. We have 3 key efficiency ratios. We have Company A, which represents the current state of operations. We have Company B, which is a potential takeover target, and, importantly, we have the industry average to serve as a benchmark. Look closely at trade receivables. Company A is sitting at 45 days, Company B is at 30 days, and the industry average is 40. Look at trade payables. Company A takes 50 days to pay its suppliers, Company B stretches that to 60 days, and the industry takes 45. Look at inventory turnover. Company A turns its stock over 8 times a year, Company B turns it 12 times,
and the industry benchmark is 10. Imagine a 60-second visual countdown timer starting right now. Your job on this site test is to mentally extract the single most high-yielding core metric from this wall of data. Which relationship tells the biggest, most important story about liquidity and efficiency here? Look at how the numbers interact with one another.
The tension is peaking. The clock is ticking down. What is the single most high-yielding core metric needed for the construction of your thesis? Are you just going to focus on the simple fact that Company B collects cash faster? Or are you going to focus on Company A's slow inventory? Remember, Builder Alex would just list all of these numbers out in a boring paragraph. Builder Sam would just vaguely say, Company B is better. But a true master architect looks for the structural tension in the data. Take a moment. Look specifically at the relationship between receivables and payables.
All right, time's up. Here is the correct structural approach to this data. Here is how you perfectly align your paragraph columns with the examiner guidelines. The highest yielding metric, the one that will score you the most marks, is the relationship between trade receivables and trade payables in Company B, especially when compared to Company A. Here is exactly how you extract the data, interpret the relationship, and justify it. You would write something like this. Company B exhibits a highly efficient cash-positive working capital cycle, actively collecting its receivables in just 30 days while delaying its payables to 60 days. This 30-day positive float provides the business with massive internal liquidity. But then, you bring in the critical analysis. You evaluate, however, stretching payables to 60 days, which is a full 15 days beyond the industry average of 45 days, heavily risks damaging supplier relationships or losing critical early payment cash discounts. Conversely, Company A's inventory turnover of 8 times, which is well below the industry average of 10, suggests severe stock movement issues. This slow movement ties up vital cash in the warehouse, cash that could otherwise be used to settle their 50-day payables more efficiently. Do you see the architecture there? We didn't just list numbers off a table. We built a compelling narrative. We bridged inventory to cash, and we bridged cash to payables, exploring both the positive liquidity and the negative risks. That is an A-star response block.
Before we wrap up the site for the day, let's do a final project sign-off. Run through this checklist every single time to develop professional A-grade accounting skills. Number 1, apply correct formats consistently. Always write days for receivables and payables and times for inventory turnover. Don't drop those easy formatting marks. Number 2, use appropriate terminology to anchor your points. Don't use layman's terms like money coming in. Say inflow of liquid capital. Speak like an accountant. Number 3, evaluate performance well beyond superficial layers. Don't just give the first reason. Go 3 levels deep into the cause and effect of a ratio changing. Remember the chain reaction. And number 4, question assumptions and consider alternative perspectives. Just because a ratio looks mathematically fantastic on paper doesn't mean it's strategically healthy for that specific business context in the long run.
So as we close down the drafting room, I leave you with this final provocative structural blueprint challenge. Does your analytical structure have what it takes to survive the ultimate examiner stress test? Look, we have the blueprints now. We have the highest grade analytical materials, and we know exactly what the building codes require. It is time to stop stacking heavy bricks of useless facts like Alex and stop putting up shiny glass windows of basis evaluation like Sam. I want you to take these blueprints, pull up a Cambridge past paper tonight, and start constructing your own unshakable A-star responses. Thanks for joining me on this explainer work.